Welcome to the CSBP Fertilisers Grow Better podcast, sharing knowledge with growers on leading crop nutrition, sustainable agriculture and other issues impacting the agricultural industry.
G'day everyone, welcome to another episode of the CSBP Grow Better podcast. My name's Gray Johnston and I'm very pleased to be joined today by Josh Russell, Operations Superintendent at the CSBP Ammonia Ammonium Nitrate business. Josh, did I get that right?
Did. Thank you, Gray. Great to be here. Very excited. Very excited.
So pleased that you're excited. Now, Josh, we regular listeners to our show would know that we bloody love talking about nitrogen and ammonia, and so what better way to celebrate the love of all things nitrogen in the world of CSBP than to get someone on from the chemical side of our business to talk about how you make the stuff. We've talked to a few different people around making green ammonia, making blue ammonia. You're in the old-fashioned world of making beautiful grey ammonia. Have I got that right?
We are. We're obviously on that road path, that journey as well to net zero and working out how we transition to blue or green and how we get there. But yeah, for the time being, we're still making grey ammonia.
Now, we'd love to get into the weeds on how exactly we make the ammonia down at CSBP in Kwinana. But first, Josh, tell me about yourself and your role.
Yeah, so a little bit about myself. Grew up in Donnybrook, small country town. Primary school there, and as you would know, Gray, high school with yourself in Bunbury. I took a year off before moving to Perth. I went and studied chemical engineering. And then I think it was December 2012. To graduate, you need to do 12 weeks of work experience. Lucky enough to get in at CSBP Fertilisers for 12 weeks. And then they couldn't get rid of me after that. I've been there since.
How wonderful.
Yeah, it was really great.
That's more than 10 years ago now.
Yeah, it was. It's definitely a bit of time in the saddle there.
So you worked in the ferts business and now you're over on the ammonium nitrate side of the business. How did that come about?
Yeah, a few different roles, a bit of transition there. So December 2012, vacation work in ferts. That then became a cadet placement. So 1 day a week for the next 18 months while I finished studies. And then I missed out on a grad spot. There were no grad spots when I finished. But Colin McKenzie had a role going in the product development team. He had a chemist role that he opened up for engineers as well. I was lucky enough to land that. I'm a big extrovert, so working in a small team probably didn't really scratch that itch. So 12 months into that role, moved into operations, fertilisers. Absolutely loved it. So most of my time in the SMP, but then also Grand Plant and UAN looking at the tank farm. That was probably 5 months, and then, as we say on site, jumped the fence or moved to the dark side and worked in the nitric acid plants as a coordinator for 6 months. Opportunities came up at Prill and Dispatch as a supervisor for 18 months. And then 18 months into that, I was fortunate enough to move into my current role as the AN Operations Superintendent.
And so what does that role entail?
My role, it's fantastic. I love it. Look after a really large, very, very capable, very diverse team running our ammonia AN production plant. So the ammonia plants and the nitric acid ammonium nitrate plants. We've got about 70, 80 people in the team, process techs, group leaders, supervisors, coordinators, trainers, permit authorisers, and basically we're there to keep the place safe and keep the plants running as efficiently as possible.
Now, Josh, I'm sure that all our listeners are really happy to hear about the team, and your love for them and your passion for them is really apparent, but I think probably more interested in hearing about the nitrogen and all the different products that you're producing. Start us with, you talked about ammonia and you talked about nitric acid and ammonium nitrate.
Yep.
Can you give us a 101, walk us through that process?
Yeah, so process sounds quite simple. Nitrogen, hydrogen, ammonia, definitely not simple in real life. The plants are super, super complex. So I think just for a little bit of context, if we bring in someone with industry experience to run the ammonia plant, it will take them up to 5 years to get to the panel and run that plant. So yeah, definitely hard, definitely complex, really technical. But we manufacture about 260,000 tonnes from our ammonia plant, which is about half of our demand. We import the other half from Yarra on the Burrup. Storage for 40,000 tonnes, so we berth 12 to 15 ships. So those ships, they come in, we've got priority access on the berth. The ammonia is pumped off to our storage tanks and then fed into our nitric plant. So the nitric acid is then reacted with the ammonia again in a pipe reactor to form ammonium nitrate. So that's 96% and very, very hot. The AN we then send to either our mates at fertilisers or down to our prill plant. So our prill plant received 96% Ansell. They dilute it down to 96% for either 90% solution sales or manufacturing of ammonium nitrate emulsion. They can also prill that a little bit like the granulation plant. We make a 1.7 mil prill, 0.05% moisture, bulk density, a lot lighter, it's about 0.75. That then goes out to storage and we dispatch it as bulk or in 1.2, 1.35 tonne bags to customers.
We can also take the carbon we produce and use it for stuff?
Yeah, so we take part of the carbon that we produce and sell it into the food and beverage industry. So WA farmers grow a bit of wheat and barley for us for our beer, but everything that uses carbon in the industry in WA uses carbon dioxide in the food and beverage industry in WA is coming from us as well. So we sell some of our carbon CO2 back into there as well.
That must eventually make its way into the atmosphere, though.
When you crack a beer, yeah.
Yep. Very good. Thank you for that clarification, Josh. We had some endothermic and some exothermic going on there, and we know that there's broadly a whole bunch of gas coming into the site at Kwinana, and then on the other side of the site we've got the sodium cyanide plant. Tell us about how the energy balance works on this site.
Yeah, so the inner nerd in me gets a bit of a kick out of this because the plants predominantly run exothermic reactions, so we generate a lot of heat. We capture all the heat through heat exchangers, boil up water to create steam. Steam runs big turbines. Turbines generate electricity. So at any point, we can disconnect from the Southwest Interconnected Network, the SWIN network, and we can go into what we call island mode, where we become fully self-sufficient on site, and we run off the power we're producing in the plants.
And I guess recycling that heat helps the plants be as energy efficient as possible.
Capturing the heat's really important from an energy efficiency point of view, but then also we're expanding all those gases on the way out and using that heat through the expanders to help drive the turbines and generate more electricity, compress more air as well.
Wonderful to hear about. I'm sure it takes all our listeners back to their thermodynamics classes. From
I hope not, especially if they were bad.
So you get the ammonia, you make some nitric acid, and you then mix more ammonia and nitric acid to make ammonium nitrate. And the bit that comes to the fertilizer side of the business, let's I guess cover that off first. We use that for?
Yeah, so we send 90% Ansell to fertilizers for Flexi-N manufacture, mix it with some urea, bit of water, send it out to the tank farm, and off it goes to the farmers.
And then I think all of our listeners will be familiar with what happens to Flexi-N after that journey, but for what happens to the bulk of the ammonium nitrate that doesn't get turned into Flexi-N, people might be interested to hear about what kind of end markets that ends up in and what kind of product type. You talked about prill.
Yeah, so it pretty much all ends up in the explosives industry, so it goes out as a blasting agent. We've got a couple of big contracts for the key mining companies, and then there's a handful of smaller customers in the southwest for smaller blasting operations.
So you talked about all the different things that happen in the plants that you're, I guess, responsible for helping to operate. What are the things that, and I think we got the sense in your earlier discussion that you really focused on the team and helping the team, work to the best of their abilities to run the plants well. What are the things you're focused on day to day?
Definitely safety and leadership. There's a big part of making sure the team's supported, and then the crux of it, maintaining that safe operation. So obviously a lot of pieces of equipment, a lot of things to go wrong. Some of the plants are running at really high temperatures, really high pressures. There's some pretty nasty chemicals. So the plant's always under a heap of pressure. Things break from time to time, and making sure that we're able to get them fixed and get them back online is really important. We've got really good support, engaging with like maintenance teams, shutdown teams, the engineers, the operators, just getting the right people in the room, making sure we get to the right outcome to keep running.
And have you developed a passion for the nitrogen industry just like we have at CSBP Fertilisers?
I definitely developed a passion for it. What's really exciting is the whole net zero energy transition and the fact that hydrogen and ammonia are going to play such a big part going forward. So that's definitely helped fuel the fire. Ferts is definitely, I feel, having worked in the ferts business, there's a very special passion for most people in agriculture towards the ferts business as well. I might be a little bit biased in saying that it's not as strong as that, but it's really, really exciting with where the world's going.
And you talked there about hydrogen and ammonia forming, a really important part of an energy transition. For those, we've talked about this a bit on the podcast before, but for those who aren't familiar, in your ammonia plant, you are, and in your nitric acid plants, you are emitting greenhouse gas equivalent gases. Can you talk us through why that is exactly?
Yeah, so we definitely do have to emit some gases to produce our products. The part of the ammonia process is that we burn a lot of natural gas to create heat. That process is exothermic, but the reaction process for the gas over the catalyst to rip the carbon, hydrogen's a part is endothermic, so we need that heat. So naturally, when we're burning a lot of natural gas, we're going to emit a lot of carbon. And then in the nitric plants, trying to capture all those waste gases and scrub them before they go out the stack or convert them back to nitrogen as we suck them out of the air is quite complex as well. There's part of our roadmap is putting in more abatement catalysts and upgrading those final catalytic reactors. But there is some amount of gases that end up back in the atmosphere.
And I know the future could be something like carbon capture and storage. Is that something you've looked into?
Yeah, so carbon capture and storage is definitely part of the roadmap and how we're going to transition to net zero. There's a lot of trial work and a lot that still has to go on, but yeah, it's part of the puzzle.
And how do you see the relationship between the ammonia and nitrate side of the CSBP and the CSBP fertilizers side working, day to day?
It's all love, great. It's all love. It's great. I think the fertilizers business obviously helps us. When we restart those AN plants, we make a weak product and we can't prill it or send it out for emulsion or solution sales. So fertilizers helps. They use the product for their Flexi-N manufacture. And then, on the other foot, I think bloody hard to predict the rain, right? So the sales team, they do a great job looking at the forecast, the nitrogen market. Rusty and his team, great job on the procurement front, but challenges with shipping, challenges with COVID, nothing's ever smooth sailing in that area. So when the FERTS team can't quite meet demand with imports, here comes Ammonia AN, top you up AN manufacturer, Flexi-N manufacturer to meet that gap in the market.
So it's lovely to hear about a great relationship between the fertilizers business and the ammonium nitrate business and how we can help get some benefit from that, I guess, inherent flexibility to meet both of our end markets really, really nicely. What are some of the other challenges, apart from unpredictability, that you face in your role, Josh?
Specifically in my role, probably two things that come to mind are on the technical front and the leadership front. So I never got to work in the Ammonia AM business as a technical process engineer. And like I said before, the plants are super complex. So when something goes wrong and we're working through problems with the engineers, the maintenance team and the operators, sometimes it's challenging to follow along and make sure you're adding as much value as you did as a technical engineer in the fertilizer plants. So for me, it's really about making sure we get all the subject matter experts in the room, ask really good questions, make sure we're doing the best thing for the business and the plants and the people, and working through the problems that way. And then the other one is in that leadership space. So we've got a really diverse team. I'll definitely miss some countries here, but there's operators from countries scattered through Asia, Canada, the UK, a lot of operators from Trinidad and Tobago from ammonia plants there. So supporting our leaders with all the challenges they have naturally in leadership roles, but then with this hugely diverse workforce is a challenge. As societal norms change, best leadership practices are constantly going to evolve. So making sure we're on top of that and supporting them through their challenges and making sure we're creating a safe space for everyone is a big challenge in the role as well.
And you talked about safety a little bit before, and you mentioned a sort of psychological safety effectively there. Tell us what other sort of safety focuses you have in the Ammonia AN side of the business. I know lots of questions would have got asked when that Beirut explosion happened, a few years ago. I mean, not to make light of that at all, but it would be something you think about, right?
Yeah, that the morning that happened was very sobering. I remember specifically walking into the control room and the operators, there was almost silence. They said, "Josh, have a look at this," and they played the video through, and it was definitely sobering. But our business is a lot of policies, a lot of procedures, very heavily regulated by the governing bodies, running a major hazard facility, a lot of legislation. So we're always trying to engineer out human error or a lot of the root causes from Beirut. Those things just don't exist in our business at all. And then, transport safety is obviously really important as well. We've got a great relationship with Toll, and they're fantastic at implementing like industry best practice. So driver fatigue systems, automation systems, everything around road safety and online live data tracking. They're really good. So.
And what about process safety in the particular areas of the plant you're focused on? What are the big risks and what are the things you look at?
Yeah. Obviously, we've got high pressure, high temperature, so a lot of safety critical equipment, a lot of non-destructive testing, but then full thorough inspecting as well. We've got a great support from our process safety team, so there's a central process safety team that look after that, and then a central reliability team as well that are helping us with all the inspection work, generating reports, and providing all the recommendations. So, yeah, just really working in with those two teams and working out what we have to do to make sure we keep all the equipment safe.
What are the things that always just go wrong, and what are the things you always keep your eye out? Your eye out for in terms of, particularly in terms of plant performance. Like what are the things that when the plant starts, not quite running as you'd want it to, you've kind of learned that these are the things we should focus on.
We're pretty lucky, and I feel lucky coming from Ferts because those plants are very much on-off. You can turn them off, you can start them back up almost straight away. The ammonia plant and the nitric plants we only aim to shut down once every 5 years. So ideally for major inspections, the nitric plants are down for gauge changes every 9 months. But really we don't have any like big problems like that where we're shutting down that we run into very frequently at all. I think the challenge more is in this business is everything is so stable. When something does change, it's really small and it's hard to see. And you might not pick it up for some period of time until that difference starts to grow and becomes a lot more visible. So the challenges for us are trying to take a very holistic view and a long-term view, and compared to where we are today with where we were a month ago, and then and work out what's happened in that space.
Really nice, Josh, and it's been really nice to chat to you and hear a little bit more about what happens on the CSBP chemicals side of the fence, as you put it. And I hope that gives a sense for all our growers out there who might be interested in where their Flexi-N comes from. It's a lot of it is made with ammonium nitrate produced at a plant in Kwinana, run well or otherwise by Josh. So
thanks, Craig. Thanks for your honesty.
No, not at all. And look, thank you very much for coming to share that with us and give us some insight into what's happening there, because it is fascinating to hear about, and nitrogen is so important to our life in the world of fertilizer. So great to hear how you're ripping it out of the air and stuffing it into some fertilizer for us. Thanks so much.
No worries, Gray. Thanks for having me.
And thanks to you all out there for joining us for another episode of the CSBP Grow Better podcast. Remember, you can follow us at CSBP Fertilizers on all your favourite social platforms, and subscribe, rate and review the podcast to make sure other people can find it. Until next time, I've been Gray Johnston. Thank you, Josh Russell.
Thanks, Gray.
Thanks all. See you later. Goodbye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the CSBP Grow Better podcast. For more information about CSBP, please visit csbp-fertilizers.com.au or connect with us on social media at CSBP Fertilizers on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and LinkedIn.